I'm John Harrison, second generation contractor, co-owner, and founder of Brittivia Homes Construction, Inc. I've been in the industry since I was 14 years old, and beginning this week, my team and I are going to be starting a podcast called Built Different. We're going to dive deep into the world of residential construction. Whether it's remodels, home renovations, or additions, we cover it all. So whether you're planning your dream renovation, adding more space, or just curious about how the industry works, you're in the right place. Hi, John Harrison, Brittivia Homes Construction, Inc. And today's the day. First episode of Built Different podcast. And what are we going to do on this podcast? We're going to actually dive into how to do certain things in construction, how construction budgets should go, how different markets are, and actually talk about the knowledge I've gotten over the last 25 years doing construction. My mom and dad were both licensed contractors, and it was a different house growing up. Biggest thing they taught me as a contractor was don't tell people you're perfect, because no one is. Tell them you'll go back until they're completely satisfied, and that's kind of what we've built this whole business on. But to start this podcast, I'm pretty excited. Why? Because everybody has questions about construction or their house. You live in a house and you're wondering, well, how is that done? Could I save if I just did a portion of the project? But what a lot of people are talking about right now are interest rates, what their house is worth, value of the land they live on, and we're so blessed. We have someone who's been in that industry for 15 years. His family's been doing it for 100, and I'm so thankful to have Taylor Healey with us from Healey Real Estate. Taylor, how are you?
John, how's it going? Thanks for having me be your first guest. I'm Taylor Healey. I'm with Foster-Healey Real Estate. I'm third generation at our company. Company's been around for 100 years, as John says. My family's been running the company since the 70s when my grandfather bought the company. I started in it 15 years ago and never looked back.
Well, you're kind of a staple in this area. If you're Leominster, Fitchburg, Lunenburg, Westminster, all those surrounding towns, I see red signs everywhere.
Yep, we've got to have them all over North Central Mass.
And so you had your thumb on the real estate market for that long. And tell me what you see as you've been doing it for the last 15 years.
There's always been ups and downs in the market, always subject to things like, years ago when I first started, we were really into there was a lot of foreclosure properties at that time. There had been a bit of a market crash way back then, but we've seen a steady climb, and then we obviously had some wild times a few years ago during the beginning of COVID when the rates were just obscenely low. But it's been a nice steady increase in values over the last few years, and it's been quite the ride.
So specifically right now,
Yep.
With interest rates and prices, I'm a guy, I'm 30 years old. I put together a little nest egg to buy a house. Do you think right now is a good time to buy?
Absolutely. The right time, obviously my answer to people is always the right time to buy a house is when you're ready to buy a house. People always have different life events that influence their decisions. A lot of people over the last couple of years have held off on that decision just because of where the interest rates have been. So we've got a lot of pent-up demand for household formations. People have gotten married, people have had their kids move out, they're looking to downsize, but everyone's been stuck in place because of the interest rates where values have been so high that newer buyers have been having a hard time buying a house, and people who have been in their house for a long time have a hard time selling because they'd be buying with a higher interest rate. But right now we're noticing that it's leveled off. We're not going to see those 2-3% rates for who knows how long, if ever again. But it doesn't seem as though we're going to see crazy spikes in them. So right now is a great time to buy, because if those rates do start to creep up, you're locked in at a lower rate. If the rates go down, you can always refinance, but your value is going to go up. When the rates go down, prices tend to go up. So if you can get your foot in the door right now, you can. My dad always likes to say, you date the rate, you marry the house. So You find a house you love, you buy it now, and you can always go refinance later if the rates dip down. And if the rates don't go down, or if the prices go up, then you look great because you bought a house for a way lower price.
Yeah, no, I if I go back in my own home journey for the different houses I've owned and sold and bought, my first interest rate was 7.25, and I couldn't get the pen out quick enough to sign the
Yep.
bank paperwork. It's
Yeah.
so funny how that. Or my dad bought a motor court, and his interest rate was 17.
My dad always tells me that when he was selling in the 80s, early 90s, when the rates were high teens, I think he always said if he'd get below 15, he'd be able to sell anything.
My, how things have changed. That's kind of funny. You know what I'm noticing a lot more in the industry, though, and tell me if it's an actual trend that I'm noticing, but I'm seeing, I go on Realtor.com all the time. I try to keep my thumb on this area's market as best I can. It's where my house is. It's where some other real estate I own is. And I'm noticing when I see a house price, a lot of times right to the right of the house price on Realtor.com, there's a green number with a minus sign next to it, and it's down $5,000, it's down $15,000, it's down $20,000. Have you noticed that at all? Are you seeing anything like that?
I have definitely noticed a lot more of that. You know, you look back a couple of years ago, especially in the heart of COVID, when prices were just going through the roof. There's a lot of sellers that are still caught in that mindset that wherever I price my house, it's still going up. It's definitely leveled off. So
Okay.
you've got a lot of sellers that have trying to ride that wave that are still pricing, expecting the numbers to keep going up, but we're not seeing that. So those people that have priced them on the high end, we're seeing that is kicking down a bit. Also, you look at the time of year, winter is typically the slowest time of year, so things sit on the market a little bit longer. It's not something that I typically get too worked up with my sellers, you know, just because of the timing. But at the same time, it is something that the longer a house sits on the market, the more people get, their motivations change, and that's when you start seeing those dips down in prices. So I think a lot of it was, we had sellers that were very
They were
optimistic
continuing on
that wave, but the wave is kind of leveled off.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so we're not seeing the crazy appreciate, although I will say there are markets that we are still seeing those crazy appreciations. Although it's slowed.
Is it more of a town-by-town thing in certain cases?
Absolutely
Or city
is.
by
You
town?
look at cities like Fitchburg, Gardner, they're still riding that wave pretty well. Higher towns that are viewed more as the higher end towns, you look at Lunenburg, Princeton, those towns, they've certainly leveled off quite a bit. There's obviously going to be outliers on those,
Yeah.
or houses that have sold for crazy numbers, but
Okay.
overall those towns have more so leveled off. It's the towns that have historically been viewed as the affordable options, that those are still getting such an influx of buyers that you are still seeing more appreciation.
I want to talk about a couple of the properties I saw, and one in particular where it was priced, and over the last 30 days it came down to about $15,000. So what I did, and I'm not saying this is the market, I'm just saying it happens to be a house in this general vicinity that I looked at, and if you were to take the original price of the house and you put it with the interest rate back in 2022, 2023, and then you take what it reduced down to at the 6.4 that it's at now, there's about $190 more you'd be paying now. But your down payment would be $3,000 less, right? And you're paying $190 more. Now let's just say, we all know interest rates are going down. I happen to be excited about what's going on with the whole country right now. And at one point, it's going to trickle down into the interest rates. And I believe they're going to come down. Who knows if it's 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, who knows? But let's just say it was 4 years. And you bought right now and they went down. You're saving $3,000 on your down payment and about $5,000 on your monthly payments that you've paid over the last 4 years. So it's an $8,000 savings if it comes down. Like you said, if it goes up,
Yep.
on the inverse.
They're locked in at a better rate then.
Exactly, and it was just something I happened to look at and throw some numbers to. I'm not. It could be an outlier, and it probably is.
I think we all hope the interest rates go down. Who knows? There's so much turmoil in the world right now.
Yeah, there
that
is.
It's just no predicting it seems like. But at very least, the way I look at it and what I'm seeing a lot of economists projecting is we're at least going to see stabilizing of it. I think there's a lot of optimism that it could potentially go down. I think if we can get the economy a little more under control, we'll start to see that, and that would be wonderful for all of us.
So let me ask you this: seller in the current market. I'm a seller.
Yep.
With the current conditions, tell me a little bit about how you feel about that.
I think it's a great time to sell. There's very limited inventory on the market right now. There are so few houses. So when you've got buyers that are out there looking, there's always going to be buyers looking because people have life events that
Yep.
there's always going to be a reason that someone needs to buy a house. When they have so few options, it puts the seller in a really good position where, hey, I've got a limited commodity that people want. So as a seller, it's great. You look at the prices right now, they're still selling at inflated prices over a few years ago. So a lot of people who are selling right now, they've been in their houses 10, 20 years. They've built up incredible equity. So they're going to leave, they're going to walk away from the deal with a considerable amount of money that they can then use to move on to the next phase of their life.
So that makes sense. I feel the same way. I did notice I happened to be listening to a reel, and it talked about how the mortgages from 2022 and 2023 have gone down about 75%, the amount of mortgages than where they're at right now.
Yeah.
And I just didn't know what that translates into, other than what you said, that there's a limited market, so people aren't out housing mortgages. Like
That's the main thing is that, and also the refinances as well. When you look at the number of mortgages that were written back then, it was that everyone was refinancing to get into these, in some cases, below 3% rates. Right now, the refinance market is considerably limited because if you're sitting in your house at 2.5%, 3%, you're not refinancing it to 6.5, 6.8. But and not to mention there were just a lot more home purchases. The market was wild during those years.
Yeah, and mostly because of the rates.
Exactly.
I'm so glad you explained that, because sellers might look at that and think, well, maybe now isn't a good time to sell. But the way you just explained that and how I feel as well, with the limited amount of inventory, I have a house up in New Hampshire that I'm in the process of selling, and we're noticing tons of people coming. We haven't touched the price, and we know we're going to get our number. And people are starting to realize, the person that I saw it on the reel was trying to say, well, that means that it's a disaster, but it doesn't. It just means less people are getting mortgages. There's still a great market out there.
And you look at days on market, like you're talking about there. Days on market, especially this time of year, days on market, I put a lot less weight on.
Yeah.
You know, you look back, if you went back 5 years ago when everything was selling the day it hit the market.
Right. Yep.
If something was on the market for 2-3 months, it was, well, what's wrong here?
Yeah.
We're now getting back to a little bit more of a normalized market. When I started years ago, you'd see houses on the market 80, 90 days, and you'd never think twice about that.
Right.
So now we're seeing a little bit more of that, especially this time of year too. Winter is the slow time historically for us.
We're coming out of that now.
So those days on market are less concerning to me at this point than they would have been 2-3 years ago.
Right.
So, and I'm seeing the same thing where listings that I had seen that had very little activity for months, all of a sudden they're getting hot.
So that I want to dive into a little bit different market or question in that same thing. I'm getting into the purchase mode and I've put together a nest egg, or I'm selling and it's a multifamily. I know that's a whole different market.
Yep.
So I want to get your thoughts on both sides of that, as a buyer or a seller. Where do you think we are? And either way, whatever the data tells you, let me know.
Multifamilies are a fantastic investment. I know people who have made a killing with them. If you buy a multifamily right now, you look at the super limited rental market. There is so few units out there for the demand for how many people are looking to rent apartments or space in a house. There is just not enough out there. So people who are buying these multifamilies are able to rent them out in a heartbeat. They get a million applications on day one, and they're getting rents that are just off the charts. So as either an owner-occupant, which is a great way for someone to get their foot in the door for owning real estate.
Right.
You own a multifamily and you're renting out the other units. It's great for a newer home buyer because they can keep an eye on the whole property. But as an investor buying multifamilies, it's just a wonderful way to build equity. The value on these buildings just keeps going up, and the amount that they're getting for a return on their investment through the rents is continuing to rise as well.
Now, owner-occupied, you're really subsidizing your big time by having two people throwing in on it. With sometimes positive cash flow.
Yeah, some people essentially they live in their house for free and are pocketing some money because they're able to do that.
And seller.
Yep.
How do you feel about a seller of a multi?
the market again is just so hot for them. If you've got a multifamily that you're looking to sell, you're going to have buyers pretty much bang down the door, unless there's always reasons why something might not be that it needs a ton of work or such. Although there's still a huge market for properties to be fixed up. There's, as you obviously see, properties that need fixing up are in high demand as well.
Absolutely.
So, but selling a multifamily, it's probably a hotter market than selling a single family.
Yeah, I agree 100% with all that. And it's so cool that we've been able to talk about the current real estate market, but I want to talk about doing additions and renovations and different home renovations that are out there. And there are probably people out there who have thought about doing certain things, but there's been an level of people being unsure in 2024. And I think that's come around where people are starting to realize that we're not in a position where we thought we were going to be. And they're starting to consider things like kitchen remodels and bath remodels. And if you look at Remodel Magazine, they have a cost versus value report. And it actually talks about a kitchen remodel. What it costs to do the average one is somewhere around $24,000. And then your equity immediately is $23,000. So it's about, or maybe it's $25,000 is what it costs, $24,000 is the equity, about $1,000 difference. And so Taylor, that's when, as soon as you finish the project. Tell me, what are your thoughts on doing a kitchen remodel if you're thinking of selling in the future, and how that, as far as not only equity, but as the time goes on, how the equity gets better or worse?
Yep.
And if you think it's a good thing to do with homes this year?
Absolutely. So doing any major renovations on a house, obviously there's the expense that goes with it, but the increased value is two separate things. First off, if you're renovating a house for your own use, the added benefit for yourself, the value, you can't even calculate that as a number. Adding a bedroom, doing a new kitchen, making a nice primary bath, those sorts of things just drastically change the way you live in a house and can improve your quality of life majorly. But when you're also looking at it from a resale point of view, not only does it increase your dollar value, but you also gain value in time on market. A house that has brand new kitchens, bathrooms, maybe an extra bedroom, adding a garage, those sorts of things, those will reduce your time on the market because your house becomes that much more valuable. So it's twofold. It's improving the house as far as livability, but it is absolutely increasing value, increases what a house can appraise for, adding these things. Adding square footage is just increases the usability of space. Or you look at sometimes some of these renovations, for instance, things you've done in the past on houses that I've sold with you, where you've opened up walls, made rooms just feel bigger, changed the whole flow of a house. These projects that you can put the dollar price, obviously, you can price what the work costs to do.
Yeah.
But sometimes the return is not even something you can calculate. If you're flipping a house, it's one thing, you can see the value almost immediate, but for someone who's living in their house, these changes, you just can't even calculate how much these are worth because it changes how someone's life is spent in the house.
I think of holidays and you're cooking the turkey, but you're also able to talk to Uncle Joe about the football game coming up.
Yep. You don't have the hole-in-the-wall kitchen over to the side. Instead, you've got the kitchen is now the heart of the house where everyone's gathered around, and that's one thing I did at my house was I blew out my kitchen, made it wide open. It was this little kind of cubby space, and now it's where my kids sit at the counter at the, we've got the island, they sit at the counter and do their homework, where my wife and I are cooking, and I like to think I do a decent amount of it, but she'll tell you that she does all of it. But that's where we hang out. We're always around there, and we open.
It's where the life of the house is.
We even opened up our kitchen to the living room, so when the kids are in the back living room watching TV, we can be in the kitchen doing our thing. Everyone's still together, even though we're in separate rooms.
No, that definitely makes a lot of sense. And I'm noticing on the cost versus value report, the average front door almost doubles the value of your house. So even if you're out there in your house and you're like, how can I freshen up the front of it? You can actually double the value of what an average front door is by changing it in equity. So what you put in, you get double that in equity.
Well, first impressions. People walk up to that
so
front
true.
door. It's, if you walk up to a front door and the doorknob's falling off, or it's creaky and wobbly, it's not the same as a grand new entryway.
Yeah. And what about decks? Once again, that's kind of where life happens too on a house. But it's the outside where you actually can hear birds chirping and crickets.
A deck it's one of those things that I think people get a great return on their value because it's increasing your living space, at least for three quarters of the year. You're increasing your living space, and where nowadays after post-COVID, a lot less people. Well, you're seeing people travel a little more, but a lot more people vacation at home.
It's true.
You're using your outdoor space at your house a lot more.
I've done
so
it.
Having a nice deck to go out on, it's just a great thing. You walk out there, light the grill, have a little barbecue, get all the friends and family together, and enjoy the weather.
Absolutely. No, definitely. I agree with that 100%. So if you are thinking about doing a remodel or a deck or a kitchen reno or bath reno, we've been doing it a long time. We'd love to at least come over and take a look at what you got and give you an idea of some numbers, and then you make the decision from there. So Taylor, let's talk about a subject. February 2nd of this year, ADUs, or accessory dwelling units, that are not just in-law apartments, but they can be for profit also, have become the new zoning law.
Yep.
And virtually every lot, anyone who has a single-family lot, or in some towns a multi-family property, can add an ADU to it. And we've been putting together some numbers and working out how we can keep the budget in a position where there's a lot of equity when the person's done with the project. And I think we've dialed in some great ways to do that. But tell me on your side, if you have a single-family home and you're getting older and your kids' families are growing and you want to keep them close to home, which is awesome. Right now, my brother and his nephew live right next to me for that very reason, and it is such a blessing. But that being the case, when you're done building out an ADU, tell me about the equity that a house would have after doing something like that.
An ADU, or accessory dwelling unit, which, as you mentioned, are historically called a in-law apartment. They are a wonderful value added. You look at as a family grows, and as we were talking about, who are sometimes looking to downsize.
Yeah.
You might have a family where the parents who've lived in the bigger house have younger kids who've recently gotten married, starting their own families. The parents are looking to downsize, but always want to be nearby. All of a sudden, they have the ability to have this accessory dwelling unit to move into, and the kids move into the main house. Likewise, you have these units. If you've got a single-family house that you have another little room with a kitchen and bathroom off the side that you can rent out, it is a great way to subsidize your own mortgage and maybe put a little money in your pocket. And it really does help people, especially when you look at this economy. Everyone's looking to make every extra dollar they can, and we're all trying to get by, and having the ability to have that extra income or cash flow is just a great
And the limited housing, like we've been saying on the market, it's crazy.
Yeah, there's absolutely not enough housing out there.
Yeah.
Look at some states where they've overbuilt. You look down in Florida, there's these sprawling developments that they can't even sell all these houses. But up in the Northeast here, we are at such a shortcoming on how much housing we have. We need as many more units as we can.
So once again, thank you very much. If you have any real estate needs, whether it's multi-families or you're buying your first house or you're buying your third house, I just went through the process of buying a property with Taylor, and he brought so much information to the table. It was more than I wanted to know or read, but he actually went right to the important parts. He had them highlighted. He read them to me, then he explained them to me. So I went in as a very educated buyer, and that's kind of what they bring to the table. So again, thank you very much, Taylor.
Thank you.
So Taylor, can you just tell people how they can get in touch with you?
Absolutely. First off, you could call my office anytime you want. Our number is 978-537-8301. Or you can call my cell phone directly, 978-697-2712. Or email me at taylor@foster-healey.com.
Thank you so much, Taylor. And that kind of concludes most of our first podcast. And I'd really encourage everyone out there, if you could like and follow us, that would be really great. We would truly appreciate it. But more importantly, if you can comment, If you have some comments on the stuff we've discussed, or you're on a house and you're thinking about putting an addition on and you have a question about that, put it in the comments. We'll try to hit it in an upcoming episode. And we're so thankful for you. We'll see you next week when we bring something brand new to you. And you'll see in some of our ads this coming week what the subject will be. We haven't started to discuss it, but we haven't put something together yet. So thank you and have a great week.